You patting nips? You patting your nips? you gotta get them ready to go. Stop.
All right. We just watched a show called Solar Opposites.
These genius aliens are smarter than any man. Who knows what game of chess they're playing with us?
Oh, don't throw that out. I can sell it.
It has an unstable gray hole inside.
You're an unstable gray hole.
Nice.
It feels like I'm the only Slurpian who wants to escape this planet.
We're aliens.
Big room at the table.
What's that, Victor?
So this is a new Hulu exclusive show by Justin Roiland, the Rick and Morty guy. You know him, you love him, and some other guy who gives a shit. I don't care. Yeah. So this is it's direct to Hulu. It's 8 episodes long. Go watch it if you have Hulu, or if you don't have Hulu, we have Hulu. But
That's really
yeah,
helpful.
they just dropped 8 episodes randomly, a whole season 1 or whatever. What'd you think?
It's fine.
Say that's probably gonna be the consensus, is it's fine.
It's not awful,
yeah.
but it's not as endearing as Rick and Morty, and it's not as funny as Rick and Morty, and it's not as clever as Rick and Morty. So you really just wish you were watching Rick and Morty.
Yeah, it's kind of like, so the way I would phrase this is like, it's like the American Dad or the Cleveland Show to, like, Family Guy starts off super successful, gets spin-off. Like, first there's the new original show, American Dad. And American Dad is like, same creator as Family Guy, but obviously they took it in a totally different direction, even though it's still centered around, like, the family unit as an archetype of the storytelling structure of the family cartoon sitcom, But it took it in a different direction. And then you have, like, the Cleveland Show, which is just a spin-off of Family Guy, which is just the same thing again, but the characters are black, Like, and so that had its 3 spin-off shows that all have the same sort of narrative voice to them, because they're created by the same guy. They have the same animation techniques, they have the same pacing, the same styling and everything, but they have these different characters that can fit into different situations in different ways. So this Solar Opposites show kind of feels like that same sort of thing for Rick and Morty. Like, Rick and Morty is obviously immensely successful.
Right.
So it comes time to do a spin-off show. And so this show has the same art style, the same pacing, sort of, the same sort of narrative voice as Rick and Morty, but in a more traditional, grounded family comedy sort of style,
way. Yeah.
Because Rick and Morty has obviously, from the beginning, been like, well, it was initially this parody of Back to the Future characters or whatever, but then with the show, they put it within this archetype of the family comedy show. You have mom, dad, sister, little brother, grandpa. But, like, Rick and Morty, the show, very quickly abandons
any
like,
of that.
That
the
whole idea.
Of, like, the sitcom.
And it's always felt like Rick and Morty is always at war with itself, and that's Dan Harmon's, like, classic archetype of, he did the same shit with Community that he does with Rick and Morty, where, like, it's constantly battling its own identity, it's constantly trying to, like, escape its own meta, and fuck around, and twist the audience around. Like, one of the latest episodes, they get on the plot train or whatever.
Yes.
And then they start creating, like, they start showing you possibilities of what the end of the show would look like if they followed, like, the canon that everyone wants them to follow. And that's classic Dan Harmon, like, fucking around. He always feels trapped by whatever he's done with his story, Rick and Morty will have these brilliant story moments that they don't intend to follow up on, and then they get frustrated by the fact that people want them to follow up on it.
Yeah, the fans then want them to follow through.
And so Rick and Morty has always been trapped by its own structure of being this family show with A plots and B plots and all that stuff. It's always running around, fucking around with itself and changing what its identity is. And this show feels like a departure from that in the way that, like, from the beginning, the characters are very similar. Like, you have, what's his
Well,
name? Fucking
Yeah.
alien science guy.
Corvo?
Corvo, yeah.
I don't know how I remember
Corvo is sort of the central character. He sounds just like Rick. His personality is similar to
Voiced
Rick.
by Justin Roiland.
Yeah.
It's the same character type. So, I mean...
Yeah, but it's like mad scientist kind of guy. Sounds just like Rick, but is a more grounded character than Rick, you know? Like, he's the same sort of archetype, but much more of a structured character that isn't flying off the rails and being incredibly inconsistent all the time like Rick is. But
he
that's
doesn't have
sort
the
of
unpredictability that Rick can have.
And then he's got his foil is Terry, his solar opposite. Fucking whatever device that is.
No.
But like Terry is the foil to Corvo, and he acts as sort of the Morty, but he's like an adult. He's just kind of a naive guy. He's not really like full on. He doesn't have the character complexity that Morty has, and Corvo does not have the character complexity of Rick. They're kind of just like sort of surface level, almost representations of those characters.
Yeah, it's almost like if a fan wrote a Rick and Morty fan fiction and they didn't have a good grasp on what the characters were or how to write them, and they just kind of put forward the most surface level characteristics and said, this is Rick, this is Morty, go.
But then, so it's like, it's both the show's greatest weakness, but also probably its greatest strength in terms of creating longevity, and I think that's kind of the goal with this. Because Rick and Morty always feels like a show that's ready to end at any point.
Any given moment.
Because they're so sick of doing it, and they went so big so fast that they always are confused on where to go next because they know whatever they do is going to let people down. You know? It has to go more meta, more big, more insane every episode because they've already hit such ridiculous heights that it's like, how do you keep going? Yeah, they can't de-escalate. They can't return to like the normal family show structure that lasts 10 seasons, you know? And that's kind of the give and take with Rick and Morty and why everyone gets so frustrated with it. So this show from the beginning is much more grounded and feels a lot more like an American Dad or something, where it just has like these characters that they have these defined personalities, and they can throw those characters into any situation in the world and you know how they're going to act. They're very predictable. And there's a structure there for them to actually continue this for a long time.
Yeah.
Sort of like...
It's almost like how Shonen is built to run indefinitely.
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
Exactly. Like The Simpsons, you know, Bob's Burgers, Family Guy, they're shows built on simple characters. That's fucking great.
Thank you.
Love that guy. Shows built on simple characters to last forever. Like, that is the goal with the family comedies, just to run as long as humanly possible with characters that never grow, never change, and never learn a whole lot.
Yeah.
And so I think this show is built way better to continue that without the influence of Dan Harmon and his, like, crazy, like, development and all over the place shenanigans, you know? Where... like, we just watched this show, and then we watched the latest episodes of Rick and Morty, and Rick and Morty is just so much fucking better than this, because it just gets you on that visceral level, and it's so funny and so good.
I think it's just because, like, we've seen what Solar Opposites is so many times.
Yeah.
That it's something that you've experienced before. It's not awful, but it's not great.
Yeah. It's definitely, like, it's lacking that uniqueness, because it does feel like it's just trying to do what everyone else is doing, but with its own spin. And, like, to an extent, that's fine for me, because I watched all those shows growing up. I'll still put on the newest season of Bob's Burgers, even though I think it's gotten really stale, you know? Like, the family comedy has a purpose. It's just to be, like, this really casual shit that you put on forever and it never goes away. Like, I think it does fulfill that purpose well, where Rick and Morty totally fails at that aspect of being a show that can last a long time without tearing itself down constantly and becoming like this narcissistic mess, you know?
Yeah.
And that's like where people get really on the fence with Rick and Morty. And then like people get frustrated when Rick and Morty goes into really stupid areas or it's really inconsistent, whereas this show will always be consistent because it's not amazing, you know?
Yeah.
I also think an interesting aspect of it is Terry as a character and the family dynamic that they have, because these are aliens and the kids are their replicants.
Yeah, they're
so
clones.
like they are clones of the couple guys. The two guys just met before the plot of the show happened, which is like their home planet was destroyed. They escaped in a escape pod with the replicants, and they have like this goofy dog with them who's gonna be the end of the world.
It's a pupa. It's not a dog.
Yeah, it's the dumb mascot character. But what's interesting about it is that they aren't a mom and dad, and there is no mom.
Correct.
And they have an episode kind of commentating on that. But I think it's really interesting as an abandonment of the family sitcom mob. Because that's always the weakest character in these shows.
That's true.
Because they always have the mom start off as the voice of reason, because mom has to be the voice of reason. She has to be like
because female.
She usually has to start as this very safe character, because you can't have the woman doing anything offensive and outrageous. She has to be the grounded character while the guys go off and do offensive, crazy, outrageous shit.
So wacky.
Because those are the cultural archetypes that we have to fall into. And inevitably, over the course of these shows, the mom slowly deteriorates whatever the fuck her character was until it's just total chaos. And, like, you see that in Lois from Family Guy. Like, they never know whether to make her, like, grounded and mature or have her flying off the handle, because in order for the plots to work, her character has to get looser and looser, but then in order for certain, like, more grounded plots to work, they have to revert her back to, like, this mature voice of reason, and it just creates a really shitty, inconsistent character that doesn't really mean anything.
Yeah.
American Dad does it better. That mom is a little more loose and can fit into more situations, but has the same kind of problem of being, like, inconsistent sitcom mom. Cleveland show, same problem. Bob's Burgers does a little bit better of a job by having the mom be really
Bob's
wacky.
Burgers is the best at that, just because Linda is already kind of like a caricature, like a pretty big personality.
Yeah, they let her be big, so like nailing the mom is a really difficult thing. And even in Rick and Morty, they have to face this dilemma of like the Beth and Jerry dynamic from the beginning is so rocky and so shitty that, like, they can only play into it the same way so many times, and then they eventually have to have them break up.
Right.
And then you get to this episode where Beth has to make, like, the unbelievable out-of-character decision to stay with Jerry, and it has to be, like, this weird, ridiculous plot to get her there, and she has to have, like, kind of a mental break, because the insanity of her getting back with him, like, the only way they could make it work was to make it, like, ridiculous, where there's still a question of whether or not the real Beth went off into space and, like, the Beth we are currently experiencing is a fake, you know?
Right.
Like a replicant robot.
Clone, yeah.
Like, they have to leave that open-ended because it's so ridiculous that Beth and Jerry get back together, you know? Because their relationship was too extreme from the very beginning, but they need that relationship to exist to write B-plots, you know?
Yeah.
They have to have it continue, so you get an inconsistent character. This one, there's no sitcom mob. They just have Terry, who's just like an amorphous guy, you know? Like, he doesn't really have any sort of morals or, like...
Yeah.
He's just, like, an agent of chaos to be in the story that is chaos, you know?
You would, I think, struggle the hardest to find the defining character traits of Terry as a character. Like, what is he?
He's just like a goofy, loose kind of guy who wants to have fun and doesn't take anything seriously.
I guess you could say, he's like the idiot archetype, you know?
Yeah.
Like, he's kind of a moron, kind of just wants to have fun, down for whatever, but...
But it allows the show to get more into those ridiculous plots from the very beginning, because they didn't create a character that doesn't work within those plot lines, you know? Like, Terry and Corvo can just get into a weird headspace immediately and agree on something that's fucking ridiculous and then pursue that without anyone as a voice of reason.
Yeah.
And that definitely plays to the show's strength in letting those plot lines just, like, go and not have anyone who's, like, the nagging person dragging it down.
Yeah, there is no voice of reason, per se, in this show. Which is fine.
Like, Terry and Corvo, I think, are okay characters.
Sure.
The kids had to grow on me.
Yeah.
Because the kids come off as very fucking lame initially, but, like, over the course of the season, I think they did a better job of kind of establishing how their characters play, you know? Because, like, there's the daughter who's, like, the nice girl daughter sort of character, and the son who is the fucking asshole intelligent son who doesn't get along with anyone. It is a spaz dick.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it took me a minute to track, like, what the relationship between, like, Corvo and Terry and the kids were, because initially my mind didn't make that connection that, like, oh yeah, they're just the clones.
Yeah.
Because I was like, so are these their kids? Are they supposed to be the parent figures? Why is this one presenting as female? Why is that important?
Yeah.
It just took me a minute to kind of make that connection, because it wasn't readable easily for me.
And there's, like, an episode about where the girl has to go off and learn about female empowerment, which was a pretty funny episode. But
She has to break a
you
glass
get a
ceiling.
line about how she chose to be a girl.
Right.
Like, these replicants choose their gender, and she chose to be a girl, and is now like, why did I choose to be a girl?
Right. They were like, we told you not to.
Yeah, which was interesting enough. But yeah, so initially the kids kind of suck and you don't really get them, but over the course of it, like, they become stronger as characters, and the subplot, the overarching subplot of this was what I enjoyed almost the most of the whole thing.
I think that's almost what I liked the best in the whole show.
Even though, like, the subplot arc of this season does feel like something that would have just been, like, an episode of Rick and Morty.
Yeah.
But, at some point, like, early on, the boy is shrinking people with his shrink ray. The people who are bullying
people
them.
who piss him off. He shrinks them with a shrink ray, and then he confines them in this little like hamster maze wall mini society that he's crafted in their bedroom.
Yeah, because over the course of episodes, he's building this into more of, like, first he's just kind of shrinking people, then he's collecting people he shrank, and then he can only shrink bad people and not good people. But bad people means, like,
Someone
a guy who looked at him
stepped
wrong.
on his shoe, like, anything.
Like, super hilarious petty shit. Like a guy who farted in an elevator and blamed it on the kid.
Or a waitress at Benihana that gave him shrimp instead of chicken.
Yes. And so he's putting all these people in this wall full of, like, connected cubicles in the kid's room. And so we start to follow this character who's a guy in a red shirt who he gets shrunk and put in there. And then over the course of multiple episodes, there's, like, a society that's been built in the wall, and then the guy in the red shirt and a waitress become, like, the leaders of the resistance to overthrow the order set by, like, this gang leader.
The Duke.
Yeah, the Duke of the Wall.
Like Escape from New York.
It turns into this whole fun subplot, and it has, like, an entire episode as the climax of that subplot with all kinds of fun twists. And, like, it was cool. I like that they developed that, and it felt like a good, like, overarching narrative payoff as a B plot instead of an A plot, so that the characters can still be loose and do whatever they want. Yeah. Do goofy bullshit, and then have the seasonal B plot be something that pays off. And I think that'll help for the longevity of this too, because they can just switch over to another set of characters and have a new B plot when that one gets stale, you know?
And it will still give audiences something to actually be invested in while, you know, the characters are doing silly, less consequential things.
And that was a fun twist versus the usual family show that doesn't have that at all, you know? It usually just has its own B-plots for whatever episodes. So I hope that's something that continues, or that they continue to do similar things with other characters or something like that. That was a nice touch. Another thought on this is the fact that they dropped this as an 8-episode season, I think is sort of the new... It's probably been this way for a while, but, like, the new pilot episode. Because it was odd that, like, 8 episodes is not really a full season, you know?
Sure.
But, like, if they had just dropped episode 1 of this on TV, episode 1 of this wasn't good, you know?
Yeah.
It was kind of shitty. And, like, after episode 1, it was like, do we want to keep watching more? Do I make a 1-episode impression? But I'm like, there's nothing, we're not going to have anything to talk about if it was just 1 episode.
Yeah.
And then we just kind of watched the rest, and we watched it all in one sitting. And it's like, I think that is the future of pilot episodes, and a stronger way to do it, both on the side of, like, the analytics for the company making this shit and for, like, getting you invested in this property.
Because you get a better taste of the concept rather than being confined to 20 minutes to figure out, do I like these characters? Do I like this idea? Like, it gives you a little bit more breathing room.
And as far as ratings for the shows goes, like, they get to look at 1 episode and then see how many people stayed for the other 8, you know? Like, I think that's a more valuable analytic to have to look at, do we want to continue this versus just 1 episode? How many people watched it? Did they like it? You know? pilots are kind of dumb, and I'm glad that they're going in this direction with it, where at least, like, even if it gets canceled after one season, at least you got, like, a meaty little chunk to enjoy.
Yeah. I think this is the kind of thing that even if we didn't get more of it, it would be like, that's okay.
Yeah.
It was fun to watch.
It was a fun little weird thing. It kind of reminds me of, like, the Oblongs. As, like, this weird cartoon.
Yeah.
That it's kind of like this offbeat family comedy thing.
I can dig it. I can agree.
It's been a while since I saw the Oblongs. I used to love that as a kid. Probably one of the few people that love the Oblongs.
I've seen it. Can't say I loved it, but
I liked family comedy shows as a kid.
See,
and like Mission Hill, that was another one season kind of weird cartoon. That wasn't like as much of a family one as much of like a college kid show.
Yeah.
But
I've just never been that into that genre.
Yeah. It's just something you gotta, you're into it or you're not, I guess.
Yeah,
but I just
I guess
watched
so
much of shit like that growing up. Like, because Family Guy and Futurama, I went to bed to my entire life, Especially Futurama. Like, fuck, the Adult Swim played the hell out of that forever. So, like, I'm used to just watching these things constantly. As far as character designs go, that's definitely the weakest part of this.
Yeah,
I really think they could have gone with stronger designs, and I'm not sure how well the show will catch on based on those designs.
Yeah.
It feels like the little slug guy is meant to be like the t-shirt seller, merch driver.
Yeah.
But like I didn't feel like this is a show that's very hot topicable,
Yeah, those character designs aren't gonna read very well on like shirts or whatever, and even like Terry's design really reminds me, and this is kind of bizarre, of what's the fucking character from Rocko's Modern Life, the big mouth guy?
Oh yeah,
reminds me of that, and I don't like that character design either. So
it's just a matter of like Rick and Morty are such distinct, memorable designs that communicate a lot immediately.
Just looking at them.
And the designs of this show communicate nothing just looking at them.
Yeah, it just feels like they're really like unimportant alien characters from a Rick and Morty episode.
Yeah. I do still wonder if this ties into the Rick and Morty universe. I think there's suggestion in there, but I'm not sure. A little hard to tell at this point.
I mean, I certainly wouldn't rule it out, but I also don't really know how important that is.
It's totally not important. It's completely
pretty
irrelevant.
inconsequential, if you ask me.
Yeah. So, what it's lacking is the incredibly strong characters of Rick and Morty that make Rick and Morty so good. But
Yeah.
if you're into the style of humor, it's got that. It doesn't hit those highs, but it's all right. It's worth a watch,
If you want something to do for an evening,
Yeah.
it does have some pretty fun alien monster designs. There's lots of gore and funny shit, so...
Yeah. It's got its moments,
You know.
You'll kind of lull in and out and then be like, oh, that was cool. Oh, I liked that a lot. That was neat.
Yeah.
Sweet. And that's Solar Opposites. The worst title ever, by the way.
Yeah.
Terrible name.
The interesting thing is, when I brought this up to you, you said you had seen no marketing for Solar Opposites.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything.
Right? Which is weird, because I saw a ton of marketing for Solar Opposites on Twitter and on Instagram.
Weird. I didn't see any until we watched it, and now I'm seeing it on Instagram.
That's weird. Because definitely, especially on Twitter, I saw a lot of ads and a lot of, like, on the For You kind of page, Solar Opposites was being advertised quite a bit.
Maybe it's based on who you follow.
I mean, very true, because I
talking
follow
about.
a lot of artists.
Yeah.
So...
Oh, interesting. Because to me, it was just like, what the fuck is this? It came out of nowhere. All right.
Bye.
Bye. Let me eat it.